Hello everyone, this is Roland Famasi. I'm a senior agricultural economist at Rabobank, and I'm headquartered in Fresno, California. And I'm coming to you today on behalf of the Center for Growing Talent by PMA. I originally gave this presentation at the World Ag Expo for PMA, and I'm going to share it with you today. And I hope you enjoy it and learn something today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so you can see the presentation, and we'll get underway. So my specialty for Rabobank and Rabo AgriFinance, and by the way, Rabo AgriFinance, which you see on the slides, is the rural lending division of Rabobank here in the U.S. And my specialty is fresh produce, which obviously works perfectly for my affiliation with the PMA. I am a proud member of that organization. So let's get right into it, and we're going to look at some 30,000 foot view perspectives on the produce industry. All right. I mentioned Rabobank. Just, briefly, Rabobank is the largest food and agricultural bank in the world. We're present in over 40 countries, and we serve the entire food and ag value chain, from farm inputs all the way to food retailers, food technology, etc., and everyone in between. I'm going to start with 10 trends that my team globally is constantly monitoring that are impacting consumer food choices today. And that's everything from changing demographics like rising incomes in developing countries. Obviously, food safety is critical, convenience, more attention to environmental sustainability, social change, ethics, and those kinds of things. I think most of these are going to be self-explanatory to you. There's probably one that requires a little bit of explanation, and that's the hybrid consumer that you see kind of in the middle there in orange. When we say hybrid consumer, we're talking about consumers who, in some categories of purchases, not just food, but in other categories as well, they're looking for the best deal, for value items. But then in other types of categories, they're looking for premium products and are willing to pay up for those premium products, right? Picture someone who is maybe a college graduate. Maybe they're still living with mom and dad at this point. Maybe they have a decent job, and then so they don't own their own home necessarily. They don't even own their own car necessarily, and they're saving monies in those areas. Maybe on some of the basics, even if they are on their own. But then picture that person, wanting to go out and eat sushi 3 nights a week. And only drinks the most premium beer you can think of out there. So a lot of those consumers exist. So that's the hybrid consumer. They want value in many categories, whether that's toothpaste, toilet paper, you name it, and they want premium products in other categories. Luckily for us in the food industry, oftentimes a category that those consumers are willing to pay up for premium products in is the food and beverage category. So this trend plays well to the food industry. So these are 10 big trends. This is a very messy slide. I leave it this way on purpose. My point of that is to let you know that there are things hitting the industry of agriculture from all angles. Many different items, and this isn't even everything, but it is a very rapidly changing environment that makes it exciting, that also makes it challenging. These are some of the bigger trends. Now, what I like to do is I think there's a more constructive way to view that, and we can think of broader food items, or this really works well for fresh produce especially. So this is the way I like to view consumer purchasing habits within fresh produce. We'll start with the base here, which is really about transparency, food safety, and affordability. These are not differentiating factors for companies or brands as far as I'm concerned. These are the basic things that every brand must do just to be playing the game. And these are the basic costs of entry, right? We know that transparency in the value chain is tantamount today. That actually ties in with food safety, right? There's really no room for food safety issues. We still have them, unfortunately, but we're getting a lot better, and we already have gotten a lot better over the years. And then affordability. Affordability is a pretty easy hurdle because food is relatively cheap in the United States relative to our income level. So that's a relatively easy hurdle. But remember that consumers still make trade-offs between one produce item and another produce item based on the relative pricing. So you still have to put affordability in there because it's still critical in consumer purchasing decisions. So these are the basic costs of entry that you really need to get right. If you get them right, you don't get any extra credit for them. But if you get them wrong, it can really destroy a brand or even a segment sometimes, right? When you look at spinach consumption it's just about finally recovered from the E. coli outbreak that it had over a decade ago. So those are the types of costs that we bear when food safety becomes an issue. On top of that, I like to put what I call the trifecta of success. So these, to me, once you get the basic things at the bottom taken care of, these are the things that really can lead to a lot of success in the food category, in the produce category specifically. Okay, and that's taste or eating experience, convenience and flexibility of a product, and the healthfulness of that product. If you have these three things, along with the three things at the bottom, these can really take you a long way. I don't think we talk about taste and the eating experience enough. I think we take it for granted and think that that's an obvious thing. But if you think about different segments out there, mistakes are sometimes made in the way food items taste, and it does slow things down. So I think we have to acknowledge that taste is still king above everything, right? In other words, give me the most healthful product out there, and if it doesn't taste good, then the market penetration's going to be low. The next thing is convenience and flexibility. Look, that's become almost as important as taste in today's market. We know that over 50% of the eating occasions in North America are now considered snacking occasions. People always have either a smart device in their hand, or they're on the laptop with one hand, they're eating on the go. So convenient type products have become critical. And then you sprinkle in this healthfulness idea. So give me a product that tastes great, is convenient, and is also healthful, and it really propels a product. And we'll see some examples of that here in just a minute. And the reason why all this is important is things have changed over the years. When I was younger, we pretty much ate peas and carrots quite a bit because those were considered the most healthful type produce items out there. And then we went through a phase 25 years ago, maybe not even that long ago, when everything really had to be leafy green in order to be considered extremely healthful. That's all changed. Now we have superfoods that taste so good, we put them on our ice cream and eat them for dessert, right? That wasn't the case necessarily 15, 20, 30 years ago. Absolutely. So that paradigm has shifted. And that's why I say products still have to taste great and be convenient, not just be healthful. So we add to that, to the top of the pyramid, a couple of broad topics or things that can really be a rocket ship to your brand or your product, assuming you have the bottom parts of the pyramid here taken care of. Okay? And that's things like ethics, social good, environmental sustainability. Those things are becoming more and more important, and those can be the things that really help give an advantage to a particular product or a particular brand. But again, that assumes that the 6 things under that are taken care of, right? If those things aren't taken care of, then no matter how good you are at ensuring social and ethical good and environmental sustainability, you're still going to have challenges. All right, so let's look at some examples of that in action. And this is based on USDA data. So it's only through 2018. This data is usually about a year behind, almost. So what we have here is we have the compounded annual growth rate in pounds per capita of different fruit and nut items in the U.S. So this is use. So it's not, strictly speaking, it's not necessarily demand, but it's a good indication of demand, right? Because we know some products wasted, etc. But let's look at that. And they're ranked from left to right, as you can see. When you look at the total fruit and nut category, you can see that it's less than 5% per year, sits around 2 to 3% compounded annual growth rate per year. But you see that not everything's created equal. Right, the fastest growers over the last 10 years, as far as consumption, have been berries. You see raspberries, blackberries, blueberries top the list. Again, think taste, think convenience, and think healthfulness. Right, it doesn't get much more convenient than berries that you can just pop in your mouth. Right, they taste good. And they're considered superfoods. So they really tick those boxes. Then you start getting into some other products there. Pistachios, we know that those tick those boxes very well. They've been very, very popular. Mandarins, again, the convenience factor of mandarins, the size and the easy peel have really helped to propel that. But again, they tick the boxes of taste and healthfulness as well. Mandarins, avocados, almonds in there. Then you get this group of products that I'll call exotic. And maybe I should have included that as one of the hot topics driving demand. But you get things like limes, pineapples, mangoes, kiwi fruit, certainly papayas. Certainly there's a tendency these days for consumers to want to experiment with their food, try new exotic flavors. And so that's been another factor in this. Now, before I move on, I want to remind you of a couple of things. One, whenever I look at compounded annual growth rates, I always use an average of periods on the front end and an average of periods on the back end, right? And that's true, especially when I'm talking about demand, because that allows me to make sure I'm smoothing out any supply side shocks that might occur in any given year. So when I calculate compounded annual growth rates, I never use 1 year on the front end and 1 year on the back end. I use an average on the front, an average on the back, and it gives you better results in my opinion. So that's important to recognize. The other thing to recognize is that this ranking here doesn't necessarily indicate relative profitability. Right, this is just one part of the equation, right? So, for example, consumers in the U.S. are eating a lot less stone fruit. You can see that here on the right-hand side. But keep in mind, stone fruit supplies have also come down significantly in the U.S. Now, those two things are tied together, right? Weak prices due to a lack of growth in demand led to a supply pullback. But remember that in any case, if supply pulls back enough to get supply and demand in balance, you could have a profitable crop, even though your per capita consumption is declining. All right, we'll shift over to vegetables. When you look at overall vegetables on the far left, the growth rate in per capita consumption, it's pretty close to zero. So what's that tell us? That tells us that there's a cannibalization story going on in vegetables. So people aren't necessarily eating more fresh vegetables, they're just trading one item for another. So that may be trading iceberg for romaine or green leaf. It might be trading whole head lettuce for packaged salad. right? So it could be a different product, or it could be just in a different form. Again, keeping in mind taste, convenience, and healthfulness, right? Vegetables they're a little tougher to get around on that convenience factor. But what we'll see in a second is that there's been a huge increase in value-added vegetables. That's where the hot spot is, and that adds a level of convenience. But look at Brussels sprouts, #1 ranking as far as per capita growth rate. And keeping in mind taste on Brussels sprouts. I mean, I'll be honest. Look, my family of Italian farmers, I've been eating Brussels sprouts all my life before they were cool. And the issue is traditionally we always boiled them. And the taste and texture wasn't necessarily that attractive. But lo and behold, what's happened over the last few years is some chefs out there, top-notch chefs, have figured out how to cook Brussels sprouts, right? Cut them in half, drizzle some olive oil and some sea salt on them, put them in the broiler, and they come out pretty nice. And people really, really like that profile, that texture, that flavor. And so that has really helped to propel Brussels sprouts. So again, taste is critically important. And of course, they tick that healthfulness box very, very well. You've got kale, collard greens, southern greens. Some of those things might surprise you, but that really plays toward in the healthfulness trend and the green drink trend that has become very, very popular in these categories. All right. So now we're going to look at retail volume. And this stuff's up to date now through 2019. Excuse me. And what you'll see, what this shows is the year-over-year change in retail volume for these broad categories. Now you'll notice berries is in there as a specific category. It snuck its way in there. I must have used this slide last time presenting to the berry industry. So that's just a little extra detail for you, but that was more of an accident than anything. As far as berries being singled out. But if you look at overall fruits and vegetables, again, this is fresh. On the far left, you'll see that for most years, there's positive growth, but it's not huge, right? It's pretty flat. Fruit had a couple of good years there, but again, relatively flat overall. Berries has definitely been more robust. I mean, it is the #1 category in the produce aisle as far as dollars spent these days. Vegetables, again, respectable, but not huge growth in most years. Then you get over to the value-added category. The value-added category has had some higher growth rates. Value-added fruits have fallen off a little in the growth the last couple of years. We've actually had some declines. But the most robust category you see here is in value-added vegetables. So why the difference in value-added vegetable growth versus value-added fruit growth consumption? The reason is that the value-added vegetable category is really developing much faster right now because it's a little later to the party. Right? Think about value-added fruit. Sliced apples have been around for a long, long time. Now, granted, baby carrots, which is value-added, they've been around for a long time as well. But recently, what we've seen in value-added vegetables is we've seen the introduction of things like pasta made from fresh vegetables. We've seen a big increase in the microwavable pouches that have a combination of vegetables, seasoning. You pop them in the microwave and they're ready to eat. So again, that convenience factor comes to play. So there's major development right now in the value-added vegetable category, and that's why you see it really outperforming the other broad categories. Packaged salad, we always look at that separately. Pretty robust. Very, very good year-over-year growth rates in volume. That's impressive considering that the packaged salad industry is roughly about 25 years old. It has a very high household penetration rate, but it continues to reinvent itself year after year. New flavor combinations, new value add, additional ingredients that you can sprinkle on and add to your salad that comes as a kit. So that is really, really a positive story there. And I just want to say hats off to the packaged salad industry for their continued innovation. It's been tremendous, and it continues to be. Okay, talk a little bit about organic. My team follows this trend very, very closely. Organic produce, fresh produce consumption has been the hotspot. So organic consumption growing much, much faster, as you can see here. Here, I'll flash back for you. Right, look at these growth rates for all fruits and vegetables there, right? They're in the single digits. You look at all organic fruits and vegetables, and you've been quite a bit higher than that in most of these years. But what I want to point out is that even the organic volume consumption growth has slowed down. Look at that pattern on the left. It looks like a downward stair step, right? It has been slowing down in recent years. Organic berries on the far right have really been more robust. Even the growth rates have come down a little bit, but they've continued some pretty strong growth. The story in the organic space is this, that you still have a relatively small percentage of the population that demands organic produce all the time. Right? Now keep in mind, when it comes to organic food, the produce aisle is the leader in organic food consumption, no doubt about it. Dairy would be second. But again, you have this small percentage of the population demands organic produce all the time. Because we've increased supply of organic so rapidly over the last just over the last few years, but really over the last 5 years, we have an abundance of organic produce. Part of the reason for that is that retailers really, really like to stock organic produce. They get to tell a little different story. They get to charge a little higher price. So but what we've found now over the last 2.5 years is that organic produce prices, especially in the value chain and at the farm level, have come down significantly. The reason for that is that now we have this additional supply that has to find its way into the broader consumer market, right? Beyond the hardcore organic purchaser. Well, the majority of consumers out there, let's call it roughly 85% of consumers, they're much more price sensitive when it comes to organic, right? In other words, if the organic price is similar and the quality is good, then maybe they'll buy organic, maybe they won't, right? So that has put downward pricing pressure in the value chain in the organic space. And so we see a kind of a positive growth story here, but that growth has slowed down. Look, we're still bullish on the organic produce space in the medium and long term, primarily driven by the fact that retailers want to stock it and want to put it on the shelves. But we have to be careful in some of these items because growers aren't necessarily getting the premiums that they need when they're taking on additional yield risk in growing organic produce. Okay, going to shift gears on you here, talk about something else that's very, very exciting particularly for the produce space globally. And, we hear a lot of talk about the importance of China as a market, for example. We finally got the phase 1 deal done earlier this year. But I want to show you why we talk about these things. If you look at 2009, here you see that about 28% of the global middle class was in the Asia Pacific region of the world. Right? By 2020, this year we expect that to be about 54% of the global middle class. And by 2030, probably 2/3 of the global middle class will be in that Asia Pacific region. But the longer term trend is significant rising incomes in developing Asia, which drives middle class growth. And as consumers' income goes up, not only do they eat more, but their eating habits change. They start to demand more of what we call the perimeter items of the store. Fresh produce, fresh dairy, deli, fresh meat, those kinds of things. So this is a really, really positive part of the story as far as produce consumption growth globally. And it's one of the major drivers going on. And when I say produce, I'm including tree nuts in that as well. We know that certainly places like India and China have been and continue to be critical for U.S. tree nut exports. So keep this in mind, and that's why you hear about the importance of these regions in the Asia Pacific part of the world. With that, everyone, I will shift back here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've got some new food for thought. Maybe you have a little better understanding of some of the things going on in the industry. And I hope that all of you stay healthy and enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thanks for your attention.